Lisa Raitt, the former Conservative Deputy Leader, now the Vice Chair of Global Investment Banking at CIBC, and the former Conservative MP, Stella Ambler. And I bet all of us would like a beer about right now. Lisa, okay, the vote, what does the vote tell you, Lisa Raitt, and what happens now?
That there is no doubt that the majority of caucus wanted to remove Mr. O'Toole as the leader. There can be no doubt. And as a result, Mr. O'Toole did the right thing resigning. So that leaves National Council with the ability to start a leadership selection process. And that's what's going to come next. It's going to be after they elect the interim leader tonight, of course. The National Caucus and the membership will then focus on finding the new leader.
Stella, Ambler, your take on this, was this a rejection of Aaron O'Toole, or was it, I mean, it was obviously, but was it also a rejection of the vision he had for the party? And does that mean it's up for grabs?
Oh, I think so. Most definitely on both fronts. Actually, I think that, Conservatives represented by caucus had finally had enough. They wanted a principled conservative who could articulate conservative ideas. And Aaron couldn't do that. Aaron O'Toole could not do that. And this caucus did not want to go through one more election like that, like the last one that happened a few months ago.
Well, what was
and that, they made that clear.
What do you, Stella Ambler, what do you think it was when you say that, like what are the things that did not resonate with not only Canadians, but now, more importantly for him, with the Conservative caucus? What were the straws that broke the back here?
You know, I think it was a buildup that started with the fact that he ran as a true blue conservative in the leadership, and then immediately turned around and decided that that wasn't the best way to be the leader or the best way to be the leader in an election campaign. And so, there was just so much that there was only so much that the caucus could handle. They felt, I think, that they weren't respected. I know just from having been in a caucus with Stephen Harper that the loyalty piece of it is a two-way street. And I heard from a number of my former colleagues who are current members that they did not feel that he had their backs, and they were planning. They knew that they had to do something about it because they wouldn't want this to happen again. They were tired of the flip-flopping and the weaving and the bobbing, and they couldn't even explain it anymore to their constituents. So it's not really a surprise that this build-up was a long time coming.
Lisa Raitt, your assessment, like as Stella Ambler said, there's a lot of MPs that felt they kind of betrayed. I know when he did that flip-flop and he said, no, I'm going to have a price on carbon. I know you had said you'd lost your riding because there was not a price on carbon. A lot of MPs, especially in the West, said we'd campaigned for years against it, then he finally got it. Was that an issue that basically drove a stake through the party there?
I think what ended up happening is the fact that Aaron, when he ran, as Stella said, as a true blue conservative, ran on the notion that there was not going to be a carbon tax and that he was going to follow that policy. And then he made a change. And while that change would make somebody like me happy, the reality is that he did it so quickly without getting the blessing from the MPs and from his caucus that it threw everybody off base. And as a result, it does cause a rift between the leader and their caucus. And I think that's what happened. If there's to be a change like that in policy, it really has to be something that comes from the grassroots, and you have to work through it in that manner. And that's the appropriate way to do it. He tried to do it really quickly, probably given the fact that we were going into an election so quickly. And that would have been the error in tactics.
Okay, so Stella Ambler, let me present it from Aaron O'Toole's view, because the way he presented it is, I'm trying to modernize the party. I have to appeal to a broad range. I need seats in Ontario and Quebec. We can't keep over-winning seats in Alberta and Saskatchewan. To do that, we've got to insist on new policies like the carbon policy. So this is not your father's party, as he said, and he brought up Brian Mulroney. Is that vision of the party toast?
Well, I'll say this. I was elected in 2011, and this was Stephen Harper's fourth kick at the can. And And the only time that he won a significant, the Conservative Party, won a significant number of seats in the Greater Toronto Area. And so, as I say, it only happened on the fourth try, because it's very difficult for conservative leaders to not only keep the base, energize and motivate the base of voters who always vote Conservative, but to also convince swing voters that you've got the right plan and that you have the right ideas for them and for the country. And so, but I found that in particular, and in my riding, that was South Mississauga, that the working class, blue collar Canadians, they were very responsive to Stephen Harper's message and to his ideas, and they weren't center ideas, center of the spectrum. They weren't small L liberal ideas. He was a principled conservative, and he was able to articulate principled conservative ideas, and that appealed to people in suburban Vancouver, suburban Toronto, and across the country. So I would say there's no magic bullet. Maybe Erin O'Toole tried to find that magic bullet. I say though, when we stick to our principles, and when those principles are conservative, that's when we win.
Lisa, what are the hazards going forward, and what are the opportunities going forward for a party that's back in the wilderness trying to reinvent itself again?
I don't know if we're in the wilderness. I mean, I think we're just looking for a leader. And as you pointed out at the top, both Stéphane Dion and Michael Ignatieff didn't win their elections, and they eventually found Trudeau. They actually ended up in the third position in the House of Commons. They lost the opposition, so they went through their process.
By the way, I would refer to that as the wilderness too. That is what the wilderness seems to be. You go from leader to leader. But okay,
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I think being in the wilderness is having 2 seats left in the House of Commons, as that happened one time for us. But where I think we are is this. I think there's a lot of opportunities in having people come in and talk about why they want to be the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, what they think is needed for the country to lift it up and to move it forward, and how they plan on doing it. And that's an exciting time for Conservatives. I know that people are probably thinking, oh my gosh, another one. We're so tired of all of this. I don't think so. I think these are energizing opportunities for members to get back in touch with the party and the principles, and be wooed by the people who are coming in to try to get their vote. I think it'll be a good time. I think the challenge is they still have to be a really effective opposition in the House of Commons. Now more than ever, you need a strong opposition in the House of Commons to test what's happening there, especially in a minority government. So that is the challenge. That is going to be the challenge for the interim leader.